Live.
Cool.
Let's just hold one moment and make sure that there's confirmation on go live, and then I'll do our intro and we'll get started.
Yeah, I don't see it on Twitch yet, but maybe I have to just keep preloading or something.
Yes. Send. I'm just messaging Ty. Checking that multi-stream chat.
Oh wait, yeah, there it is.
All right, you see us? Okay, and I'm guessing that it's just working and everything can be heard perfectly, and all of the volume is balanced perfectly, just by default. Because how could it be not perfect?
Of course, it's all good.
Yeah. All right, we're just gonna go with that and believe.
Cool.
Okay. All right. Side note: this energy drink is it's good. If it focuses, there we go. It's just this
I haven't
Japanese
had an
one.
energy drink in years.
Yeah, I know. Every time I bring one up, that's what you say.
So I always am surprised that you're drinking one. I don't know why.
Yeah, every time you're like, "What? Why are you drinking that?" I remember like one of the times we were at the house in Tokyo, and you were like, "It smells like college in here," because of the energy drinks. Oh, good times.
Yeah, my friend, my friend was, I don't know, like, what is the name of those people who like rep companies and get free products for doing so and things? I don't know.
Like a brand representative or whatever.
Yeah, he was like a rep in his free time for Monster. So there were just huge cases of it in my college apartment
Uh,
all the time.
Lucky.
Yeah. I didn't drink it that much even then, but every now and then.
I drink them
My
straight up because I really like how they taste.
yeah, my roommate I thought was gonna have a heart attack from how much he drank them.
Yeah, well, it is dangerous to drink like more than one in a day. But okay, on that note, hello and welcome to the Native Shark Podcast. I'm your host Caleb, brought to you as always with co-host Nicholas, and
Yeah.
we're sponsored by our own platform, nativeshark.com. Go check it out, learn some Japanese, have some fun, come come vibe in the community, all that stuff. Much appreciate. Well, it's been a minute.
Yeah, I think it's been a month since I've been on the podcast.
I want to say that's accurate. I had Ty on 2 weeks ago, but last week like I wasn't even here.
Some stuff
Oh,
happened,
my
so
ears. Oh, well, thank you for the for the follow, Bruce. I was shocked because the sound was too high. That's my mistake. Let me turn that down. But many appreciations for that. Um, welcome, welcome. Yeah, okay. I'm looking at the notes, and like last week it was not here. Week before that we had Ty. Week before that we didn't do it, and then the week before that we did it. So, oh, another one. Welcome, welcome.
oh
So many people are following us. Much appreciate.
yeah, it's nice.
It is fun to do this live. For that reason, yeah. So like I see the episode 11. It says was February 10th. So today is March 10th. So how about that?
There you go.
Been a minute. Been a solid minute. We talked about apparently pun Panya-san. All right. Anyway, this time we have something to talk about because many things have happened lately,
Yeah.
haven't they?
Well, before you do that, I gotta say that I went to the Payasan this morning also.
Really?
Yeah, and we ate carepa,
Man, everything's just
which I'm pretty sure I don't know if they have that in any other country.
kare
Maybe they do.
karepan.
Do they? I've never seen it anywhere but in Japan, but I haven't been to all that many places in the world.
I mean, you've been to like a fair amount. I don't know if you've been there like intentionally checking for karepan or not, but
No. Which, if you're listening, is like it's bread with curry on the inside of it. It's like a crispy, crunchy roll with curry inside.
it's delicious. But it's okay. No, actually, I think it's more of like a donut. It's more like a donut with curry inside.
Maybe it's not sweet though. I guess it depends which one you where you get it from.
Well, like because a curry pan is like it's bread that's deep fried with curry
It is
inside
deep
of it.
fried, yeah.
So I guess like yeah, there's not sugar on it, but it gives me donut vibes because it's deep fried bread.
Yeah, but it's deep fried in the way that like a mozzarella ball is deep fried. It's got like those
Yeah,
crispies on the
yeah,
outside.
that's right, that's right. But like, what is mozzarella sticks except for a cheese donut? You know what I'm saying?
It's a savory donut.
A savory cheese donut.
On this episode of the Native Shark Podcast, donut philosophy.
Yes, that's what
What
we have to
is a
talk about.
donut? Um,
Why is a donut?
anyway, we had them and they're pretty good, pretty good. Normally I don't get karepan, but I did today.
Hmm. Uh, I went to the. Well, I didn't go, but Chie went to the Pagnasan like 2 days ago, I think, as well. So it's a real thing. Yes, we go often. And this time though, I specifically she says, "Do you want anything specific?" And I said, um, "Nope, anything except for a karepan." I just didn't. I specifically didn't want karepan this time because like I usually
Yeah,
get it.
I almost never get it, so
It's funny. All right, a lot of things have happened in the last month since we've been on
yeah.
the podcast together. Like life is a different place than it was at that time. Let's let's get into some of that. Starting with okay. I swear this episode will get focused. I promise you. But I've been trying to write the update letter for February, and now it's March 10th. So it's like we're 10 days into the next month, and I still haven't finished writing it. And the reason for that is I don't know how to summarize what happened in February. Like even for this conversation, it's like okay, it's the shortest month of the year, but like it was so dense.
There's a lot that happened.
I think the big brain thing is I'll be able to finish the letter super quickly after we have this conversation because I'll just write it based off whatever we say. Um.
True.
Okay. Well, you had a baby. Let's go with that for
Yeah, we had a
starters.
baby on February 22nd. Two.
Wow.
She was born at 111 on 222, which is interesting. Um,
It is interesting.
so now we have two kids here in our little house.
Yeah, man. Before we got on the podcast, I was saying like you just have another human just showed up, said, "Hey, I'm gonna live here now."
Yeah. So yeah, we're adjusting to that. Trying to figure out new routines and things that work with a newborn because Ray and I make most of the content that shows up in units.
Yeah.
Um, but we were pretty prepared for it, so it's not that
Right.
big of a deal actually
Yeah.
because we set up some pretty good systems. But yeah, we're a little sleep deprived over here.
I mean, you seem to be doing decently well right now. I see you have your
Yeah.
coffee.
Yeah, my problem is I don't like taking naps. I just don't. I don't like sleeping in general, but I need to do it more.
Like, do you just not enjoy sleeping? Like, you're like, sleep.
I enjoy sleeping, but I enjoy being awake more. There's more things that I want to do than
Interesting.
sleep.
Hmm.
Yeah. Go back in time and tell that to my like 17-year-old self and he won't believe you that I said that.
That's funny. That's how I feel about food. I don't like eating, but I like food. Like, I like having delicious food, but I don't like eating. The process of eating is tedious, and I don't like how much time it takes.
Yeah, I don't like thinking about food,
Me
like what
either.
I'm gonna eat and stuff.
Me either.
Because of that, I forget to eat a lot. Like I forget to eat meals.
Yeah.
And yeah. Ray's like, you forgot to eat lunch again, and it'll be like 3 p.m. or something. I'm like, oh, Oops.
Yeah, and then at 3 p.m. it's like, well, do I go and get something now, or do I just it'll be dinner in like, I don't know, not too long. Do I just wait? That's what happens to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, like it's 10 right now, 10:13 a.m., and like I haven't eaten anything. But that I don't like eating in the morning anyway. So like even if I wasn't forgetting to eat, I wouldn't eat in the morning regardless. Like just something weird about it. Kind of like I feel like it kind of breaks my focus if I eat food.
Yeah. Well, if you don't eat, then you're biologically you're out foraging for food is what your body thinks. You're
Yes.
hunting, so you're alert.
The one thing I have noticed on that regard is there is like something to be said about getting I don't know how you say it, like low blood sugar, like low glucose count in your blood, whatever, such that your brain stops being able to process, like your system two or whatever of thinking, like the willpower becomes decreased. Like there's been studies that like you can increase willpower by eating food up to a certain extent, right? Because there's like a threshold of between like, oh, you actually need to eat, and you can't make choices as easily because you need food and it takes mental power to process that. So if you eat but not too much, then it can rejuvenate willpower in the day, which I like, having read that and then like having noticed the patterns in my life makes a lot of sense. Like, there does become a point where it's like, oh, I actually need to eat, and then I'll go eat, and I'll be like, oh, okay, that was good. But sometimes if you eat, then it's like, oh, now I'm too tired, and then I don't want to do anything either. So it's such a balance.
Yeah, Monday. Usually I fast on Mondays. Like I don't eat until dinner, and I get the most done on Monday. I don't know if it's because of it or just because it's the beginning of the week, but
Probably both.
yeah,
Maybe a little bit of both.
probably.
You're generally super motivated on Monday though, like in general. Like I feel like that's just. I
Yeah,
think you've always been that way. Like Mondays are just your like,
I do
they're
well on
they're your
Monday. It's
day,
true.
and we what do we call it? No meeting Monday for that reason.
Yeah, I have no meeting Monday. I don't let anyone interfere with my Mondays.
Mm, yeah. Josh in the Twitch chat says congratulations for your
Well,
baby.
thanks, Josh.
Cell Talk says I don't like falling asleep or waking up, but the bit in between is nice. I could agree with that honestly. Like the bit in between is nice, but falling asleep, sometimes I really enjoy waking up. I can't say I often enjoy falling asleep, but sometimes waking up is really nice. Hmm.
So, aside from us having a baby, what else happened in February?
Well, I think it was about a month ago now on the podcast, and the letter that went out for January, we talked about a seed round, right? NativShark was looking for a seed round because we had, after a year of trying to figure it out, we had more or less figured out what kind of company we wanted to be, which put us in a position to know where we wanted to go with the company, how we wanted to do it, roughly speaking, and what amount of money that would take, and whether or not the company needed to raise money or not raise money, and how much we would need to raise. That's that we kind of uncovered that right at the end of January, first week of February, and that was great to uncover. And we figured out that we could choose to not raise money and still get the company that we wanted, but it would have taken longer and come with some pain. So we were then investigating like what is the best way to raise money, and what style do we want to do it. And we didn't want to like lose a lot in equity, and we didn't want to raise too much, and we didn't want to be forced to have like a hyper growth milestone based venture capital based company, because we tried that last year initially without venture funding. We thought we were going to go high growth kind of style, and yeah, it didn't go so well. I would say, I mean, that's a whole conversation of itself, and maybe we'll get into that a bit, but it wasn't the best. So needless to say, we identified the amount we wanted to raise, and we did it. So we closed a seed round in February of last year, not last year, of last month, which was wild. Earnest Capital was our lead investor, and then everyone else came from the community, which is pretty awesome actually. So,
Yeah,
hey, Nico, we're a funded company. How about that?
indeed we are.
How do you feel about that?
Good. Not that different than before, to be honest, but
Yeah, same.
um, I'm glad that it's the people on our current team are not in danger of losing their jobs.
Yes.
So that,
Well, that's the thing, right? Like it gave us that runway to not have to risk because we're not profitable, right? Like we haven't been profitable. Just I don't know if that's been said or not, but that's the case. And we do make money, but not enough to cover the costs, right? And so we had essentially used all of our personal capital available and all of like the money that we had made in the past year to keep things going, and it was working. We were getting through the month, but it was like very tight. So that's really what investment has allowed us to do is provided our current team um, the ability to build for stability and sustainability over a period of time. So now our timelines are looking in terms of like okay, 3 years. Like what can we do in 3 years? Like all right, that's cool. That's a lot better than trying to build a universe in a month, which is what we have been doing. So now it's like you and I aren't at risk anymore of like, oh shoot, if we want to keep NativShark going, we're gonna have to go get a job or something. It's like, okay, we're making at least enough to not have to go get another job. Like you and I aren't getting rich yet. No one on the team is, but no one also has to go and um, stop working for NativShark or whatever, or we don't have to like restructure things. So that's a good like starting point, a good um, how do you say feeling of relief, I suppose. It allows you to think clearly for um, the future so that your decisions aren't influenced by a state of scarcity. Like you can remove yourself from the scarcity mindset, and instead it becomes a like longevity, sustainable based mindset. So rather than how the hell are we gonna make enough money this month to be able to make it to the next month, it's how do we optimize for making enough money over the next 15 months such that we make it 36 months and beyond. Like that's the question now.
yeah, because for example, we were profitable in February, but there's a difference between like, oh, hey, we were profitable this month. Now what are we gonna do this month to make sure that we still are,
Yes.
as opposed to being like, great, we're profitable this month. Let's try to be next month also.
Right.
But even if we're not, at least we're like doing the right things to make the company what it should be long term.
On that note of being profitable in February, though, we were only profitable if you and I and Ade and Jay didn't get paid. That's the other thing too. It's like we're profitable as long as half the team isn't getting paid. Um, which how profitable is that really? Like we can say that because we're owners of the company, but like at this point, this is what we do, so we have to be able to sustain ourselves from it. It because it did take all of our resources. Like for a long time when that wasn't the case. Like it was like, sure, we'll just give NativShark every single dollar we have. But at a certain point, all of the dollars were gone. So yeah, February was a crazy month in that point as well. So not only okay, yeah, you had a baby, and we closed the seed round, and we're building sustainably for the future now. But we also actually had the highest sales month we've like ever had, I think, since the product launched. Yeah, I think that's true. Maybe it was August. No, August was
More
less.
than the
Yeah, it was more than the
product
launch.
launch even, yeah.
Yeah, more than product launch. So that was wild. Um, Not expected. And I think part of that was because we did another thing that we had never done before, and we had a sale. We did a Valentine's Day sort of like flash sale, which we kind of just were like, hey, like we've never done a sale before. Um, people have asked, are you ever going to do a sale? Because like it's a consumer facing product, so I know that's the thing that people do, and they ask about it, and it's like I don't know, pluses and minuses here. It's been a thing that you and I have talked about for like the entire 5 years or more that we've been doing business together. Um,
Yeah.
and we kind of just went for it this time. We tried to make something like find a price that could make sense if we got enough volume. The price point that we did $50 off. That's what we did. And like by the way that it's priced, like NativShark is priced, like the annual price anyway, is priced about as low as it possibly can be in order to like grow the company a small amount every month based on the current volume. So like volume would have to increase a lot for us to be able to grow the company quicker, right? Or so like the consideration of the sale is like, can we even like if we reduce the cost, is it actually even going to end up being like profitable basically? So the volume would have to be really high if to make up for the loss of 27% of what that is. What the $50 off of the annual price is 27%. And the first 2 days of the sale we hadn't made enough back to make it like actually worth it, but the third day we did, and it ended up doing really well on the third day. We did $4,000 in one day, which is a lot higher than normal volume. And so at that point, it was like, okay, it made up for it. But on the fifth day, which was the last day, it went back down again. So it was like decent, then a really good day, and then like back down again. So it's like the sale was, I want to say the sale was effective. And I think that overall it was a good choice to have made. But I know it's something that like we can't do often.
Well, you mentioned offhandedly that we've been talking about sales for like the last 5 years. And the reason we've been talking about them and not doing them is because we've both just been kind of negative about sales in general. And the main reason that I generally don't like them for a digital product like ours, is that I don't like the idea of having these coupon codes just floating around that are available.
Yeah.
Because it means that average person that goes through, you know, our product and decides to pay for it might end up paying more than other people that just happen to have a code.
You're right.
And so a lot of times we get these things where we have like an affiliate or a marketer saying like, hey, I want a discount code that I can give my audience so that like when I refer them to NativShark, I can tell them like, and you'll get a discount. And generally speaking, I really don't like it. And we haven't ever done that right now.
Yep.
Because what about all the people who don't follow that person? Why shouldn't they get the same price? Is always what I've thought. But the reason that a flash sale seemed okay is that it's not a thing that's just floating around out there. It's just for a few days.
Right.
If you happen to be on the fence, you have a chance to jump in. But like Caleb said, it's not like we'll do it often because then it just devalues the product. If you have a sale every month at $50 cheaper, then the real price is $50 cheaper.
Exactly. And that's the thing, like the price of NativShark isn't that. Like it's not it can't be because of the costs of running the business. Like we couldn't, you know? We don't get enough volume at the moment for that to be the case. Like the product isn't big enough. So like one of the ways that SaaS products can be low cost is because you have literally tens of thousands to millions of users and subscribers, right? Because the costs of SaaS are typically are typically lower than like a hardware product or something like that. But that's like not the case for us. We're talking in hundreds, you know, like we're talking. We have right today. I saw we have 900 paying subscribers. That's it. That's very small at this moment, right? It's not enough volume to subsidize a lower cost, for example. So we have it priced about as low as we possibly can for the annual. So bringing down $50 was like a huge thing to think about as well. But ultimately, it did end up working out. But I know that like if like you say, if we did that often, then it devalues the product, and then people basically that makes the price $50 less. But it isn't, right? So it's like we may do a site like this again, but I don't know when it would be or under what conditions it would be. I probably it would be something similar wherein it's sent to just our email list and isn't promoted elsewhere. Like we didn't post about it on our socials. We didn't talk about it in the podcast or anything. It just was like, yo, if you are on our email list, like we appreciate you. Hey, here you go. that kind of a thing. So yeah, I
Yeah,
don't know. I don't know. Like I still feel weird about sales, but like I think it worked out.
me too. I felt weird about them, but yeah, that's why it was an experiment, and we learned a lot. So
Right.
we will see.
Yep. For sure.
I see Lingo Noob asked, have there been a lot of unexpected costs since starting the business? You could say that.
Yeah. Um the answer is yes, and I want to say there's always unexpected costs no matter what business you're starting. You're never prepared for how much things are going to cost you. Um that being said, I think we had even like a higher uh velocity of unexpected costs due to the choices that we made. Mostly being inexperienced, I think, for the type of company that we're building without like a strong network of people around us that were building the kind of company we wanted to build because we didn't even know what it was when we started. So unexpected costs, yes. Cause, uh, I don't know, didn't know what the company was and started to build faster than we should have. Well, I don't know if should have is the right word, but
Yeah, well, I mean, then there's just having trying to have a company with a headquarters in the US and a branch in Japan and employees in six
six
countries or
countries.
something.
Yeah.
Um,
From the start, whilst not venture
just
funded.
yeah, it adds a lot of unnecessary costs,
Yeah.
which is where you got rid of all those things.
Yes.
We don't have full-time employees that are in other countries anymore. Um, because you have to, pay an agency to give them a proper contract and stuff, which increases the cost of their contract. We are not going to have branches in multiple countries anymore
Yep.
because it just adds so much in accounting and legal fees. Um, Even we don't even want to really have employees in too many different states in the US just because it adds so much extra time to make sure that you're compliant for taxes and accounting and all those
And
things.
extra cost,
Yeah,
extra tax.
yeah. Well, time is cost because it's like,
True.
maybe the tax for this state isn't more than this other one, but like the cost to have someone make sure that you're doing the right things. And if you're going to do it yourself, that's really valuable time.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, that kind of stuff really kind of did cost more than we expected. Um, I
Yes.
think the other thing is not so much unexpected costs, but just unrealistic expectations was how quickly we thought things would happen.
Yes.
Um, Developing software does not happen overnight, and we wanted to believe that it would,
Yeah.
and so did our community. We all did.
Yep.
um, and so we budgeted for it to happen overnight, which was not the sustainable thing that Caleb was just talking about a few minutes ago.
Mhm. But as it turns out, this is the thing that happens to a lot of people starting companies, especially software companies, and most times it ends up in the company um, no longer existing. That's typically what happens. Thankfully, that's not us. you know,
Yeah.
that's that's the kind of like that's exciting, right? Like we get to talk about this now in the past tense. Like actually, like 2 months ago we couldn't have talked about it in the past tense, but we can now. That is a thing that did happen, and we worked through it, and we're still uncovering the amount of lessons that we've learned, and we're still uncovering how we can best communicate about them to let others know, because like there's a lot of information that we didn't know because you can't find it. Actually, you just don't
Yeah, you
find it
don't
unless you know.
things.
And how
Well,
do you
and even if you do prepare, like the great philosopher Mike Tyson said, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
Exactly.
And, starting a business is a lot like learning a language. You can have a great plan for how it's going to go, but it's not going to go that way.
Yeah. Success in business is the same as success in language, and it's consistency over a long period of time with a good method. It's not necessarily like a great plan, because the plans are going to change, but a good method, right? There's a difference between a method, a methodology, and a plan.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's those are the lessons, that we're still uncovering. But it's been fun. I don't like make that I want that to be known. It has been fun.
Oh, yeah.
It's been really exciting, and it feels good to be on this side of things and be able to look back and be like, wow, we had unexpected costs, we made mistakes, but it was okay. We're all worked out, and now we're on the path to sustainability and growth over the long term, which I think is like, it's what growth feels like. Looking back at your past experiences and cringing, I think is what I've come to what I've come to learn is just what growing feels like. To be like, wow, that was really cringy. Like, why did I do that? Well, it's like at that time, you didn't know that it was necessarily not going to be a good choice. You made the best choice that you could at the time. It's better to have made a choice than to have done nothing. So, I'm glad that we have made choices all along the way, because that action has led us towards growth, which has led us towards having something that's successful, right? Like, we are not at full profitability. That's our goal, and we hope to have it within the next 12 to 18 months. But we've built something that's working really well for people. Like, the longer time exists since the launch of the product, the more people have like completed or are completing phase 1, and the more like social proof is being generated, because these people are actually really good at Japanese, and it's like crazy to see. Like, actually,
Yeah.
I mean, we did Nihongo Shark for a long time, but that was different. That was so much more nebulous, and so way fewer people actually got value from it and went through all the steps and then reported back to us by saying, hey, this is what happened by me doing. Like, we have those stories. There's probably like around like 80 to 100 of those stories that are really cool from Nihongo Shark that span over the 5 years of it existing. But with NativShark, we've gotten like 100 to like 200 stories within 6 months that are super inspiring. It's like the volume and like the rate of it happening is just so interesting. Meaning, like, yeah, it was a good choice. Software was the way to go for this.
Yeah, that's just the nature of the two products.
Yeah.
With Nihongo Shark, it was like, oh, here's a map to the top of Mount Everest. See at the top.
Yep. Peace.
And then
have fun.
With NativShark, it's more like, here's your guide and let's go.
Right. Let's just do this together. Let's show up every day. How's it going? Like, that's NativShark. So it's really exciting, and it's really cool. So now, what are the goals, right? Like, where are we headed? And looking forward, our path to sustainability is we want to see 10,000 students and 1 million ARR, annual recurring revenue. If we hit that, NativShark has reached its success point, and then we can rest again and be like, oh, cool, what are we going to do next? Are we going to teach Korean? Are we going to teach insert whatever? Are we going to, like, there's lots of options once we get that point. But it's like heads down, lots of work until that point. It's lots of figuring out, trying different things, and getting feedback from the community, iterating, lots of growth until we get that. So we're at 900 students right now. So we've got, what, 9,100 9,100 to go.
Well, we're 9% of the way there. Is what?
Yeah. 9% of the way? Really? Yeah, wow. How about that? I mean, that's pretty cool, actually. That's actually pretty wild. So 6 months, almost 7 months in, 9% of the way. Just not a bad growth. Not a bad growth rate at all. But yeah, that's the goal. A lot of people ask, like, when are you going to do X? Like, when are you going to teach this language? When are you going to teach that? Or when is insert insane feature a thing that you want to do? The answer is once we have reached full like sustainability, full growth, and that would be 10,000 students or around 1 million ARR. That's the answer. So the answer people have been looking for, there it is. So however long that takes, I guess at the current growth rate, it's faster than I expected, but you never know what's going to happen in the future. It could be a lot slower. It could be faster. I don't know.
Okay, so then the question I have, pretending that I'm a student in, is, well, then if I'm waiting until 10,000 students for my insane feature request, what can I expect between now and 10,000 students?
Good question. You can expect all of the core features that we've talked about to exist. There should be a list of this somewhere. I don't think there is right now, but Jake and I are working on one. So there'll be one release that's like, hey guys, these are the things that we're really gonna do. And then
We
the other
need to redo the roadmap page.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, exactly. Because it's a lot more I don't know. It's a lot more calm than it used to be, right? We've learned a lot from people using it and from our own experiences. Be like, this is actually the core set of features, and all the core features, almost all of them, except for placement test, all the core features exist in the product right now. It's just that they need to be improved. The only one that doesn't exist at the moment is a placement test, which that's another thing that we'll see in the future, but pre 10,000. And the other thing, and this is probably the biggest point that students are interested in hearing, is that pre 10,000 includes all of the 4 phases of content being completed. We do not need to reach that number of students to complete the 4 phases of content. So another way to put it is the entire vision of what the students and what we want for Japanese can and will exist before we get to 10,000 students. 10,000 students or 1 million AR is when the company is like, this thing will not die. This thing exists now and can continue and can branch into other things outside of Japanese. Until that point, it's like this company is working on providing the best Japanese learning experience possible, hands down. Like that's what that answer to what's happening in the meantime.
Yeah, and we're trying to come up with a metric and know exactly how quickly units will come out based on how many students we have.
Yes.
Because it'll increase as the number of students goes up.
Right. So what he's saying there is we almost have it priced out how much it actually cost to create a given unit. And based on that cost, we can then map that to our growth rate and say, if we get this many of new students, and let's say we get like another 1,000 students over the next couple of months, like how, by that new monthly revenue coming in, how much does it let us spend extra on our content creation pipeline such that we can get new content created faster? That's what that means. So we want to also publish that to show you guys. So it's like you guys can kind of, that's what our roadmap should really be. It's like, hey, I want there to be one new unit every single day. Okay, how much does that actually cost to do? And then map that cost towards how many students do we need to be able to support that, right? Like what's the actual revenue required to be able to support that? Not even worried about getting a profit yet, just how much is it cost to do it at break even? And we're not there yet, right? But we can be, and that's kind of like some of what these milestones look like over the next several months. Now that we have the space to figure that stuff out. And we'll share it with you guys, of course.
Yep.
Okay, so there's some questions along the way here. Let's see. In regards to the income from February, Cell Talk said, wow, more than product launch. That sounds great. Yeah, so product launch, I think we did like 22,000 in a month. And, excuse me, February was 28,000 or something like that, 29,000. So we just barely beat it. And this is net revenue. This is not monthly recurring revenue. Our monthly recurring revenue is at 13,000. Okay, so do you know any other startups in Japan and whether their initial struggles were similar? I do know of quite a few other startups in Japan. All foreign startups in Japan have a certain level of struggle with establishment and like getting their roots in the ground in Japan. I know of 3 that have failed within their first year. Well, failed isn't really the right word. They stopped. They stopped operating in Japan within the first year. The ones that I do know that are still operating, some of my friends that are doing that, they're venture funded, so that's an entirely different thing. Like bootstrapping is different than venture funding. Conversation for another time. But the ones that are venture funded are operating just fine in Japan, because the people who founded the company didn't even think or look at anything that had to do with the establishment of that was just like, here's a big check, probably around $100,000 to $200,000 for establishment. Here you go, just figure it out. That's probably how that went down. Other startup friends that I know who are operating in Japan, their startups aren't actually based in Japan. They just live in Japan. But the company has nothing to do with operations in Japan. Those ones are also finally successful. But doing startups in Japan without venture funding is challenging. Not impossible, but challenging.
Yeah, I think just in general, if you're going to open a business in Japan, you should have someone on your team who is a native speaker that is ready to do some paperwork and be on top of the rules and the paperwork. Because, like, for example, an editor I've worked with for 7 years now started his own business in 2014. And his wife just does all the admin stuff like that. And it's a lot of work. And he even admits he doesn't really understand what is going on or what is supposed to be what. He'll email me or send me letters and be like, you need to stamp or sign this because my wife told me you do. Because she's in charge of all like the bureaucracy.
Did you say that was your
Um,
editor?
yeah.
Ah, nice. Yeah.
Because like there's a lot,
Mm.
it just depends on the type of business you do in the first place.
Yep.
Like when I lived in a different country, I had his wife told me I had to send like these forms like showing that I wasn't paying tax in Japan and that they didn't need to report it, for example.
Yep.
Once I was back in Japan, it was like, okay, I need to withhold a certain amount of tax from when I pay you things, is
Yeah.
what he was saying. And then I get royalties on books, so they have to send me these letters that like show that I'm getting royalties, and I have to sign them and keep a copy and send them back so that we all have like paper records of these agreements and things. It's the law. Um,
Yep.
and I cannot imagine trying to manage all those types of things as a non-native speaker.
Yeah. Whilst also trying to run
And
your
even,
business.
yeah, and if you are a native speaker and you're spending all your time running your business, like even then
Yeah.
it would be nuts.
Right. Like I think it's not just about being a native speaker or not. It's just like if you're the one running the business, then managing it is something you can't do. It's just in Japan, it's an overload. There's just too much. Um, because like I'm not saying this is good or bad. There's no moral judgment here. It's just how things are here. It's just that's okay. It's just what you need to do. It's part of the process. Um,
I
whether
think it's bad
well,
because it's bureaucracy.
well, I'm gonna say like I don't have anything against like bad or good on bureaucracy. It's just like I can like or dislike it. I don't like it, but that doesn't mean it's bad. You know what I'm saying here?
Yeah.
Um, but
Every time I go to the city office, I submit a form that has my address written on it, and I'm asked to write my address on a different form or in a different box.
dude, um,
And I get the thing where they point at the address that I've written on this other form and said, "Could you write this address here?"
imagine having a
So
Native Shark podcast episode where we don't talk about going to this the city. Oh man, that's how prevalent it is though. Uh, good times. Um, but yeah,
well, obviously I went like a week ago because we had a
yeah, of
baby.
course. Like
So
you're always
yeah.
going. You've been so many more times than me, but you've been doing a lot more things like that. So for us, like we had Chie, right? Chie was the one doing all of that. But not only that, we had we were going through a third party, which I also don't recommend. If you're going to do business in Japan, do it first party in the country, like what Nico said, with someone who's a native speaker, so they can be the liaison to the local entities that are setting things up for you. Don't do what we did, which was use third party services. Big mistake.
Yeah.
People will say that's easier because you don't have to um, handle anything with it, but that might be true if you have a unlimited supply of cash, maybe.
They don't actually make it that much easier
But it
for
doesn't
you.
make it that much easier.
Side note.
We had to
Yeah.
do so much anyway that it was like, well, and now that we are, doing it ourselves, it's kind of easier. But it like, you know, it's basically just like, oh, say when authority must chia essentially, for how much he's done for making everything work for Native Shark Japan. But yeah, so a lot of effort.
So
So
Saltbox
those are the
asks,
struggles.
do you expect to do further funding rounds, or are you hopefully good until that goal, given your growth projections?
Yes, no further funding rounds. Hopefully, that's the point here. We
Yeah,
raised.
we should never need one again.
You're
We
right.
might want one in the future, depending on how the goals of the company change, but we should never need one.
Right. So our seed round was 325,000 at the end. Like that was the total amount that we raised. And our costs per month are about 31,000. So like you can do the math there. And we make about right now 13,000 MRR. So it's like take that and you can calculate kind of like what our growth rate is. So we have to hit like as long as we grow by what at the moment if it's like if we get 3 subscriptions a day, then we'll be profitable by September of 2022, and we'll never run out of money. Like that's kind of like the metrics, which we are currently getting between 1 to 3 new subscriptions a day. So it's like we should be able to do it. But so that's how it breaks down. We chose that way, like I was saying, we chose this type of investment because we wanted to grow a sustainable company. Like when I was saying earlier, like we were trying last year, we didn't know what kind of company we wanted to be. That is to say, we hadn't really figured it out, and we didn't have the best advice, and we were reading the wrong books related to the type of company that we as like owners of the business wanted to run, and we were kind of loosely following like the pop culture high growth at all costs, blitz scaling sort of mentality, because we did have a lot of like early growth, and it felt like, oh, that's what this is. Around like November or no, around September, October of last year, we're like, that's not it. So it's been like since then, it's been trying to figure out how to unravel that and then figure out who we actually are, what we actually want to be, and that is we are a community focused business. We know who we're building for. We love who we're building for, and we want the kind of company that is manageable by our team to provide like the best service and the most care for what we're building. It's what we enjoy doing, and we want it to just be sustainable. So like NativShark might end up being a huge ass company someday, but I'm not worried about it, right? Like our goal is to get to 1 million ARR. That's not in the terms of in the world of SaaS companies, that's small, right? That's very small. Most people like, oh, that's okay, cool story, bro. But to us, that's a big deal. That's what we want. It can grow bigger than that, and that's awesome. But that's where our focus is. And with that, it changes your options of what kinds of funding you're going to get, right? And what are the expectations of the investors are. So that's why we chose the route that we did. You can look it up. Go to, I think it's earnestcapital.com. They have a lot of information on the style of funding that they do. They were our lead investor. There were, like I said, there were others from the community that came in on the round, but they were the lead. So we followed like that sort of style and methodology. And the goal is to never raise again, if at all possible. We could. It's not off the table. Like I said, we could be a bigger company. We could even go public. These are all options, but we're optimizing for something different. Hopefully that answers the question.
I think it did. Yeah.
Sweet. This question from Josh, do you think there's something that stops new users from first committing to and subscribing to NativShark? Is it the price or some feature that they're waiting for? The monthly price is £21 a month right now, which I would have thought is quite reasonable. Thank you.
Yeah, we know exactly why people don't.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Subscribe.
Yes,
we know exactly.
Yes. First, I appreciate you, and I appreciate that you enjoy the app, and I love that you're learning a lot with it, and I appreciate the feedback that you feel £21 a month is reasonable. We feel that way as well for what we're providing, and it does seem to be pretty good for the market, because it does get us growth at the current price point. Whilst like I said earlier, we do have it priced about as low as we can for how much the company costs. Like we can't make it any lower. In the future, we may increase the price, but we really can't go any lower. So it feels like we're at a good spot, and I appreciate that you say that. And like Nico said, do we know why people don't commit? Not as many people commit right away. Yeah, we have a lot of feedback sources, both on enrollment and when you don't enroll, or when you do enroll and then you cancel, and then within the community and lots of reviews, all this kind of information. The biggest reasons why people do not commit to NativShark is number one, interesting enough, people want a mobile app and there isn't one. Number two, people want to be able to place themselves to their level or perceived level in the platform. And number three, people are worried that there's not enough content. So even people who are at the beginning of their studies, they see that there's just phase one, and they don't really know how long or how much content is in phase one, which is not their fault, it's ours. And so they're not wanting to commit because they don't see phase two or phase three or phase four yet, and they're concerned that those things will never be built, which is understandable, or they are already at a perceived phase two level or an actual phase two or above level. For example, a support email I had like 2 days ago was someone from New York, and they were an individual who is half Japanese, half American, and they grew up in Japan for the first, like, I think they said 6 or so years of their life. So they can speak Japanese, but they can't read Japanese very well, and they are missing a lot of vocabulary. And there's no program out there that exists for them right now that can help them, because all of them are like start at the beginning, or it's like only learning from English, without the concept of you already know some of Japanese. What are you going to do? So they're like, is NativShark going to work for me? If it isn't, will it ever? And that's a great question. I responded to them and said, no, at the moment, NativShark is not going to be ready for you, because you're likely past phase one for sure. You're likely, well, depends, but you're likely through a lot of phase two as well. The things that you are missing, the platform right now can't help you with those, but it will in the future, right? That's my answer to that. So those are the 3 reasons why people don't commit right now. It's lack of mobile app, lack of placement test, and lack of higher level content.
And those are all things coming before 10,000 students?
For sure, 100%. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, let's see any of these interesting questions. These have been great questions today, guys. Much appreciate. Tell Talk says, crazy high growth strategies to me fit for a company that is profit focused. They have a product for the purpose of making money. When NativShark seems to have different goals, you're trying to help people and make a living doing it. I'm actually going to disagree with that. Not on what you said about NativShark, but on the crazy high growth strategies.
Yeah, crazy for a company that is not profit focused.
Yes. That's the perception, the common perception of crazy high growth companies is these are companies that are focused on making a profit at all costs. I wish that were the case, but they're really not. Crazy high growth strategy companies are for companies that don't give a damn about profits. They're negative for so long. They have crazy high growth, blitz scaling, all of these things that they're for companies that don't care when they're profitable because they have an unlimited supply of money fed to them, usually through venture capital. So those companies are not optimized for profit. They're optimized for growth. That's it. Growth at all costs. That's the mantra. Go fast and break things. That's what it means. It's don't worry about trying to build something sustainable, which is to say, often, unfortunately, don't worry about your customers. We don't really matter. We don't really care about current customers. All we want is new customers. So that's what these high growth, crazy valuations that you see, that's kind of like what that turns out to be. At some point, the goal for these companies is to convert to being profitable. Many of them don't. And either they don't end up existing much longer, or they slowly like peter out, or they kind of forever exist to this state of low profitability and high churn, or they get bought, or they do figure it out and they IPO. And that's the goal, but a lot of companies doesn't. So yeah, it's I was talking to someone the other day, and they said venture capital, like getting venture capital funding is what people are really excited about. But if you think about it, getting venture capital basically means you have a 90% chance of your company not existing within 18 months. That's another way to flip the statistics on venture capital funded companies. This isn't. I'm not totally shitting on venture capital. Like, I think it actually works for certain types of companies. My thing is that it's not for as many companies as us as founders think that it is. So being a profit focused company is a bit more of what your second thing was, which was you're trying to help people make a living doing it. Because if you're trying to be profitable, you have to build a product that people want to use and they want to pay for it consistently over a long period of time. That's how you build profits. It's a long-term perspective. And the product has to be good enough or it's not going to be profitable. Then there's the other thing where there are companies out there that are predatory, but like that exists. That's irregardless of growth or profit focus. That's just people are predatory. So we can put that on a we're not talking about those kind of companies. Like they exist, they're predatory, side panel. The companies that want to exist and do things right and sustainably are focused on profits should and usually do build a product that people want to use, because if they don't, you're going to not be profitable. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. Many
Yes.
people out there might be surprised at how many big, successful, funded startups they know of that are cash flow negative and have been for most of their lifespan.
Yes.
Like Netflix, for example.
In our space, Duolingo, like they're cash flow negative
Yeah.
by a lot.
Yeah. I don't know if are they still? I don't know if they are still, but they were for like 10 years for sure.
As of 2019, with the most recently reported data, whilst they do have very high monthly income at this point, their costs are still exceed those. So they're still not. I don't know, like that could have changed in the past 2 quarters since I last did research on them, but yeah, like they make a ton of money, but their costs are significantly higher, so they're still cash flow negative. But they've been venture funded the whole way, so like that's how they're able to do that. But yeah, another big one is like Netflix. Amazon has been cash flow negative. That's a huge example, but Amazon is a bit different because even different than Netflix because of like just different strategies of things. But yeah, they also are never profitable. Maybe they have been. I don't know. I can't remember, but it's another company that is intentionally like low profit.
Yeah, in a different way.
It's a different way. It's like kind of different than Netflix is a good example of like people expecting it to be incredibly profitable, but isn't. But here's some companies that are profitable and have built like Atlassian, for example, which is a productivity software. Basecamp, another productivity software. I'm trying to think of some examples in the consumer space, but I'm drawing a blank right now. But there do exist companies, software companies, that have followed the model that we're more or less following. It's just that they get a lot less press, and it usually takes 10 to 20 years. Or at least more than 5, right? So you don't hear about it as much, and it doesn't draw headlines. So like I didn't know about a lot of these things, but yeah, they exist. Atlassian is Australia's most successful software company. Well, they started in Australia. Yeah, exactly. That's one of those companies that just kind of did their thing. But it's like it took like 23 years to get there or something like that. Also, welcome, Peter. Thank you for liking the stream. Appreciate it. Yeah. So that's kind of the thoughts on business and where we're at and where we've been and where we're going.
Yeah. It's going to be a good year, I think.
Yeah. We say that every year. I think it's true every year though too.
It gets better every year though.
And I think that's also true. It does. It does get better. I think it gets better because we're super focused. Like I asked you, how does it feel that we've raised money? And I feel the same way. And you're like, well, that's nice. But
Yeah.
but like that's it. You know what I mean? And I don't know, like I don't know what people expect. I don't really care because like to me that is the correct approach. And it's like I'm focused, so Now this is now we check the box. We're good. Time to keep going. You know.
Mm,
And I think that's because we know so vividly in our minds what we're making and what it can be. It's
yeah.
like it's always been, I would say, clear to us, but what we've been doing in the past, like, I don't know, since we started NativShark is like focusing the lens. Like we've known what's been in frame the entire time, but the clarity of which it hasn't been in frame is what has been adjusted as time goes on. But I think it's because we're so focused that happens.
Yeah. Agreed.
That and it's like it is really fun to build this for people, and
Yeah. I'm enjoying the new units for phase two
yeah, they're.
and going through content.
I mean, it's pretty cool. Like you're getting to do the thing that you wanted to do in a better way than you ever thought you would.
Yeah. I mean, it's in our content workflow stuff, our production pipeline is starting to come together. So I actually get to see content that's almost ready for a student before I've ever seen it, which is really exciting for me because I used to just be there from step one until it was ready,
Yeah, yeah. So it was less of a surprise for you to be like, oh wow, this is what we're teaching. Nice,
and a lot more work for me too.
right? Which is ultimately not sustainable, right? And the whole
Yeah,
thing
and
we're
it's
doing
certainly
is
not scalable.
sustainability, right?
If we want the thing where the higher number of students really re- leads to a higher number of units being released, then we need scalable systems. And that means that we can't have too much depending on individual people,
Right.
unless their job is such that they could go faster than a student could possibly want to go.
Mm-hmm.
Like they already plans, I think, more than one unit per workday. So like that, like she's in less in need of decreasing like her workflows, but whereas for me, I can't be translating all the sentences and then go write the lessons and
Right.
then go make sure the unit is put together properly
Yeah.
and then go make sure we have artwork for, a progression badge or a milestone or something like that.
Right. These things have to come together in a more seamless fashion, which
Mhm. And they're starting to.
they are.
So,
I mean, this past week was pretty cool, actually, wherein like, or the past 2 weeks, wherein you had a baby, but like things still weren't completely stopped because of the amount of like progress we've made towards the production pipeline over the past 4 months,
mhm.
right? Like things were slowed, so it's not perfect yet, but it didn't stop, which is the important part.
Yeah. Whereas it stopped for like 4 months before we had the stuff set up.
Yep. Yeah, right. Like
Uh,
that time between like so like October to January, right? Like it was just completely stopped because the production wasn't there. The pipeline.
yeah.
So if the NativShark content pipeline can make it through the core person who makes it having a child and still not stop, I think that trends towards a good sign for the
Yeah, that's a
NativShark
good sign,
content
right?
pipeline.
Now we need it to where even if Ray and I have a baby, it doesn't slow down.
Yes. Yes, yes.
That's the next level.
Next level, dude. Oh, it'll happen, which is exciting.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Anything else like interesting about content? We talked about business a lot, but anything? Are there any other fun stuff like been learning
Yeah,
anything?
so okay. So yeah. So we had this question from Smith in the community. What do you think about errorless learning? It states that making errors is not necessary for learning and is a function of moving too fast in a program, among other things. The current NativShark program does not stop you from moving too fast except for the pace slider. Is this something you think about solving explicitly or that it becomes less of an issue with more features? And I think trying to avoid errors as a language learner is one of the worst things that you can do.
Mm,
Not just because it'll make you worse at the language. Like if you're worried about making errors when you try to speak, for example, you're just not going to speak because for one thing, defining what's correct and what's not correct is not very easy.
Mm.
As a case in point, in one of the face units, we had the word baba, which is like a not so nice term for an old lady,
Yep.
right? And in the translation, it was like we wrote like old lady, semicolon, old bag.
Mm.
And then a student in the community was like, "You mean old hag?" And then Jacob was also like, "Yeah, I've heard old hag. I don't know what old bag is." And then
Mm.
I'm thinking, what am I losing my mind? Like I've never heard old hag actually used. So then
Yeah.
I'm asking friends and family in California, like, you think it's old hag, old bag? And every single one of them says old bag.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And it's just a regional difference, like which just happens all the time in
Yeah.
English. Um, but you get into a language, right? And teaching one. And there are going to be people who think that the regional language that they have learned is what is correct, and things that are different from that are incorrect.
Right.
And it's very hard to not to know that you're even doing this. It happens without knowing that you're doing it.
Yeah.
So even a native speaker has a hard time pinning down what's correct and incorrect many times.
Mm.
For a student to focus on that is I don't like using the word impossible because it's not a word that I like to use.
Right.
It's not very realistic to try to do, especially with a product like NativShark where we're talking about the way people actually use the language. If we want to talk about the rules of making sentences and grammar, like we can pretend that people actually talk like the way that you see in textbooks and JLPT tests.
Right.
And then, yeah, we could say this is correct, this is not correct. Let's make sure that we know everything 100% before we move on to the next thing and that all the boxes are checked. But since languages are not so pretty and they are a little messy,
Mm.
it makes a lot more sense to just keep moving forward and just feel things start to click.
Yeah. Um. Yeah, man. I think this, like, concept of airless learning, like, I think it perhaps the title is a bit of a misnomer. I'm not entirely sure
But yeah.
because like I went and looked up and I know I'm before him mention it I have heard that of this methodology or philosophy of of learning, um and it is like the goal is that the person doesn't get um like how do I put it, so the goal of it is to prevent like the learners from providing wrong answers based on
Yeah.
like a very frequent repetition of like the correct answer.
Right.
So like it is it's based on procedural learning, which is similar to what we're trying to do with um with NativShark, like procedural iterative learning, um comprehensive input, things like that. So that's like that part of it is similarly based, but I think that if to follow a certain like to follow airless learning completely would be to say that the system is broken if the student produces even one error, which I feel like produces too much, um, and I could just be misunderstanding the philosophy, but I feel it puts too much emphasis on correctness, um, on the student, such that for like what Nico said, something like learning a language is ultimately unproductive, um, because what is correctness when it comes to a language, like fundamentally, which is what your point was, right? Like what is correctness? Like there isn't necessarily there's like a frame of what is correct, but there isn't ever actually something that is perfectly correct when it comes to a language. But that's part of language.
Yeah, I mean, you're trying to create ways of expressing things that are in your mind.
Yep.
It's your teacher doesn't know exactly what you want to convey.
Right.
They can help you to say it more naturally, but they're not going to be able to help you say it more naturally until you somehow convey what you're trying to say,
Right.
and then they can help you pin down a more correct way of doing it.
Which hits on one of
And
the things that you and I like have fundamentally felt as a problem with language education specifically. This might be true in other education, but we'll filter it for language. And is that people are trying to provide correct answers. Like that's what we think the problem is.
that's what we do in school because you can grade
Right.
things that have correct and incorrect answers.
Right. Whereas NativShark is built on nuance and variability
Yeah.
because we think that's closer to lived experience. Um,
So yeah. So if you want to know how to use this word, see it used 100 different ways.
yes. Right. And then you'll have an idea of how to use it, which again, I think in essence is kind of what aerialist learning is trying to go off of, but like we couldn't take it to the fullest extent and we couldn't like say that's our
Yeah.
methodology because there's too much implied with that. So like the answer that I kind of gave in the Discord was like NativShark optimizes for one thing, actually getting the user to be functionally good at the target subject. Like every design decision, methodology choice, is filtered through that. Hence, we get the mission of the company, which is make learning simple. So NativShark has a lot of influences from various psychologies and methodologies of learning, various scientific studies, lots of conversations with researchers in linguistics, things like this. But ultimately, like what we do is we build with a first principle approach, which is start from like core concepts and then have a iterative design process along the way. So that's true for both how we teach and how we're building the company and how we're building the technology. Like there isn't much difference between NativShark the company and NativShark the learning methodology. The whole thing is one experiment, I guess one could say. Um, and
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, you're right that like in a way it's just hard to say like is it or is it not airless learning because yeah, like we do for example prevent people from moving too fast.
yeah,
Um
yep,
but for other reasons. It's not because we're worried about you making more mistakes. We're worried about you getting overwhelmed and quitting because you
right,
will.
right.
Most of you, like not. I mean, I
We
would.
yeah, we couldn't say everyone because humans are too diverse for
Yeah.
that. But most, myself included in that, I would quit. I have quit in the past. Um, so
Yep.
it's got. I would say definitely there is inspiration and similarities between NativShark methodology and wireless learning, but to say that it is not so much. Especially because like again in the context of learning the language, um, what is right and wrong in it, like what is correct and not correct, and attempting is the act of like learning. It is the process, like trying and then it not being understood and then correcting that so that it is understood is part of the learning process. Like as a child as well, like when you are learning to speak as a child, you're constantly saying things and then getting feedback from everything around you on what it should sound like, what it should, what words should be used, these kinds of things. And in the best of cases, that's a great experience for the child, and the child grows up, um, speaking languages. And in the worst case, you accidentally get your self-esteem destroyed because the people around you weren't supportive when you were trying to learn, which is the same with learning language as an adult as well. So it's like that's why surround yourself with a good methodology, stay consistent, and be around people who are helpful on your journey.
Yeah. On that same note, we had that student who asked, "I can never remember the kanji outside of kanji studies," and they were basically just feeling concerned that they keep forgetting things. Things aren't sticking.
Hmm.
How do I make stuff stick in my brain? Am I doing this correctly?
I feel like they were saying I feel like I should maybe use a worksheet or write things down. Um, what's the best approach here? what are your recommendations for someone who feels like they're forgetting um, kanji, for example, outside of like a lesson? What is the what's the response there?
Embrace that feeling.
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
there's nothing wrong with feeling like you didn't remember it, you don't get it. You're just supposed to feel like that. And once you've learned enough things, you start to have a different relationship with that feeling.
Mm,
For example, I'm trying to get back into my Korean studies because that's a great thing to do when you've just had a baby and you're busy with work. Um, and all the Korean words sound the same to me. It sounds like every single word has a J in it and this very similar sounding vowel. And I'm reminded of how I felt like all the words sound the same in Japanese when I first started
mm,
learning it.
yeah,
Because there's so few sounds in the language compared to English,
right.
there's so few phonemes. And so I thought it's impossible to learn a whole language when there's so few sounds. All the words sound the same. And there's a bunch of words that are the same.
Mm,
Homophones, I mean homonyms, some like
right,
things like that. And I was super stressed about it. But it just if you just keep engaging with the learning material, it starts to click eventually.
right.
So right now, yeah, Korean words pretty much all sound the same to me. I can't remember like anything that I study, but because my relationship with that feeling has changed, I'm not that worried about it. It's just like, oh,
Yes,
that's wild that someday
this will make sense.
they're not all gonna sound the same to me, and they're
Yes,
gonna be completely distinct.
yeah, absolutely. I think this feeling is very common, regardless of your circumstance, and it's perfectly okay. And it is actually, in many ways, a good part of the learning process. When you are questioning yourself whether or not you know this thing outside of the context of the place you initially learned it, you're not sure if you're remembering the kanji, for example, I would like to say that that means that you're learning, because if you knew it already, you wouldn't have the question. And if you didn't have that question because you weren't learning it, then you wouldn't be learning it. So you wouldn't have the question because you're not actually doing it. So the fact that you have the question is part of the process, right? You're wondering, wait, I feel like this isn't sticking in my mind. Is it actually sticking or not? So you have that
Yeah,
question, which is a good place to be because it means you're active, you're engaged with your learning, you're concerned. And so instead of taking that concern and then being anxious with that concern, we can take that concern and use it as motivation to continue what we're doing, right? We can say, oh, I have this feeling, therefore I must be on a path towards learning. And I can't say that NativShark is perfect for all people because I'm sure that it is not. There are going to be people out there who cannot learn effectively with NativShark. That's facts. I am trying to build, or we are trying to build the best system that we can to work for the most amount of people that it can, but it won't work for everyone. That's okay. However, when you're trying to decide is NativShark working for you or not, the thing that I could say is be consistent and stay with it, and engage with these questions. Like ask us, ask the community, and I feel confident giving that answer because there are a lot of people at this point that have had success once they've worked through some of these feelings and these mental loops of engaging with their studies and staying consistent and finding ways to calm their mind. In 6 months time, 7 months time, it's like they look back and like, wow, I actually learned so much that I didn't notice it even hardly because I had the feeling of I'm not remembering it, and then I just stuck with it, daily, weekly. That built upon itself, and that feeling kind of just vanished, or it changed. So the feeling still exists, but now you're using it as fuel to continue your discovery because you look back. So what I would say is, like, if there is one kanji that you can remember outside of the context of the thing that you learned it in, you're good. If it happened
yeah,
with one kanji, it will happen with another and another and another and another
yeah,
ad
and it's
infinitum.
just I mentioned earlier that you know we've all been sort of conditioned to think that learning happens the way it happens in school, which
Mm,
means that you test on it, which means that knowing or not knowing a kanji is getting something correct or incorrect on a test. It's like a checkbox. Yes,
Yeah.
I know it. No, I don't know it. But it's not actually like that's not how you know or don't know a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, if you think that, say you are starting to learn a kanji and it starts at the tip of your finger, and then knowing it, like really knowing it as well as the most educated native speaker, would mean the kanji had moved all the way up your arm and into your brain, right?
Yeah.
So maybe right now that kanji has made it like to the middle of the palm of your hand. Maybe it's made it up to your wrist. Maybe it's made it up to your bicep. But it's not at some checkbox that you just
Yes.
mark and then you know it or don't know
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
It's something that you know more and more over time.
Yeah. The thing with,
And
sorry, go ahead.
some things are going to shoot straight up to your brain from the tip of your finger just
Mm.
because you have a nice foundation of other things. Like for me right now, it's not very hard to learn a new Japanese word because I know so many other words.
Yeah.
So yeah, something could move quickly up to my brain. But when I just started, it was like it took a long time for things to make it all the way up there.
Mm.
And interestingly enough, there are many places along that path which you would pass or not pass a test on that thing.
Yes. Um, and one of the challenging things about learning as well, and specifically this kind of information, like a language, is that whether or not you remember something on a given day can depend on what you ate for breakfast or not. Like you might remember it tomorrow but not today, or you might remember it in 5 hours but not right now. Does that mean you don't know it? Not really, actually. If you've been exposed to it and you stay consistent, um it's it's a thing that like goes in waves, right? Like fluctuates, and eventually, like Nico was just saying, it does make it up to your brain. And at that point, once the vast varied inputs have gone into your brain, you now have like a network and a web of understanding inside your mind that you can now relate one concept to another concept, and it becomes easier to learn new concepts, so that feeling diminishes even further. But it's a lot of that initial uptake that can feel often demotivating or worrisome, but
Yeah.
you'll get
And
there.
then specifically about kanji, since the student asked about kanji, um, I wouldn't I wouldn't consider kanji a very good example of any of this because it's pretty hard to say whether you know or don't know a kanji
Mm,
because a lot of them, yeah, you might know it in these types of words where it has this type of meaning, and then suddenly you're going to get hit with a different word where it appears to have no meaning at all, or a different meaning,
yeah.
or a different reading, and that's fine. Like you just learn those words as you encounter them.
Mm,
Um, so if you've just seen a kanji a few units back and now it's in a word and you forgot what it meant, who cares? Just learn
yeah.
the word and
You'll be all
keep
right.
moving forward. And eventually you're probably going to see that kanji in a different word and think, well, I didn't expect that kanji to be in this word. That's weird. And then after a while, it just doesn't even feel weird. It just feels like, oh yeah, that word has that kanji in it. And I forgot what that kanji meant, but I remember what the word is and I can read it.
Right. Yep. This where I'm at in my studies, this happens to me most of the time because I don't actively study at the moment. So I can read words, I can read well and speak decently well, but I'll see words and I'll be like, I can read this word and I know what this word means. I have no idea what this individual kanji means anymore. I completely forgot. Oops. But like the context of the word and the sentence, it's all good. So you don't, this idea of needing to know what every single kanji's um, individual out of context by itself English representation is ultimately unproductive. Like you can use that as a tool. That's why it's in NativShark, but it is not the metric of whether or not you know or don't know a kanji. Um, like again, even people born in Japan and speak Japanese their entire life will see a kanji out of context and be like, I don't know how to say that or what that means. It happens to
Yeah,
anybody.
I've forgotten what they mean, independently for like hundreds and hundreds.
Yeah.
Because you just don't need to know it after a while if you just know the words they
Hmm.
appear in.
But some you do. You'll forever know what it means by itself. Like you see mizu and it's like, the fruit means water. Like you're not
Yeah.
gonna forget that. You're not gonna. But that's fine. That's how that word functions in your mind. Like different words function differently. It doesn't matter what language it is. This is just the way that it is for language and words in your brain.
Yep.
So you're on the right path. Stick with it. That's my ultimate recommendation. Stay consistent. Give it some time, and try to reorient that anxiety energy from fear of forgetting towards motivation to continue learning.
Yeah. Well, forgetting something once and then having to find out again what it meant is learning.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what it is.
Yep. So yeah, thanks for the great question. It led to a fun discussion. On this note, while we were talking about this, Celtox in the Twitch chat said, yes, I have had a similar experience to that, wherein early on he was anxious and then stayed consistent over time, and now I think he's probably at 6 or 7 months in and is near the end of phase one. And like I've seen some of his posts in the learning channel and have interacted with some of his Japanese, and I'm like, I mean, you look pretty good to me, sir. Like it's impressive. So, oh yeah, here's another comment he said, yesterday I found that I couldn't remember which was which between Suyobi and Kayobi, even though I knew for certain 4 months ago. But the moment I checked it, it was just like, oh yeah, right, of course. Hadn't forgotten, just hadn't had it reinforced recently, and so the connections were a little weak. Exactly. That is the process of learning right there, 100%. That's how it feels like. Oh yeah, okay, I got that. That's all good. You don't need to go look, oh, forgot. It's like, no, you can click, in the case of the flashcards, right? You don't need to go click the frown face. It's like, in that case, just click the smile because you did remember it. Or click if you're a little bit unsure, like, sure, click the middle one, but in that case, I would definitely click the smile and be like, oh yeah, okay, I knew it. After all, like, you know that you knew it because it's like, oh yeah, of course, there it is. Like that's part of learning. That's just how it is.
Yep.
Do that enough times, and then that won't happen with that word.
Yeah. And your base ability will get to a high enough point that all the common words just keep hitting you in the face everywhere you turn so often that you don't really need flashcards even. You just
right
interact with the language, and it forces you to review things that you forgot or almost forgot because it's part of the language.
Right. That's basically where my level is at, and how it stays where it is because while I live in Japan and I go outside and hit by stuff, I see stuff like, all my web browsers, even though I don't want them to, return results in, in Japanese a lot of times, so it's like there, and
of course they do.
And all my ads are in Japanese, so it's like I saw an ad for the trailer for a movie the other day, and it was in Korean, but it had Japanese subtitles because it's being released in Japan, and I just sat there watching this trailer for this movie that looked fantastic. Like, wow, I want to watch this. And then it occurred to me that trailer was in Japanese, like it was in Korean, but I was reading the subtitles. Like, oh, that's kind of neat. Like,
yeah, it happens
because it's like, but I'm not like even actively studying right now, and maybe there's some words in there that I didn't know what they were, but I didn't even notice that I didn't know what they were because it was like I was just enthralled in watching this trailer for this great movie that I now want to go watch. It's called Minari. So I don't know, it happens. But like it took like, again, I'm not nearly as good at Japanese as someone like Nico or even like Thai at this point. Thai's better than me as well, but I still feel this way, and I've been studying for like, well, I was studying for like 3 years consistently. In the past 2 years, I have not been really actively studying. It's been all over the place, and it's been coming from like input coming in, like native input from conversation, life, reading, media, all these kinds of things. So it's like 3 years of active studying and 2 years of life and passive study, and it's good, So it's like, I think it's funny that, like, I'm probably like our worst student. Like of anyone in the company, I'm definitely the worst student. But I take that as a form of encouragement to people who feel like bad students, right? Because even if you feel like you're a bad student that doesn't do everything perfectly, you're still gonna learn.
That's why we made the platform.
Yeah, it works for people like me and for people like Ty and for people like you. And I don't know, it's awesome.
Well, should we wrap up? It's-
Um,
Oh, one last thing is that we had a student ask for some suggestions for reading material, and I'll say that I'm pretty sure that we're gonna have a community book club coming out. So
oh, that's kind of interesting. Hmm.
yeah,
Maybe stay tuned on that one. Maybe join our community at nativeshark.com/community and
yeah,
be on the lookout for a community-led book club. Um, the idea was brought up in the mod channel, and I was like, hey, if y'all want to organize a book club, go for it, my friends. Like, I believe in you guys. So they've been kind of cooking something up, and I'm not sure exactly when they're gonna launch it, but I support it.
yeah. But even if we get emails like this, like what should I read or study? Like, do you have any manga or anime to suggest? We always just say just go to the community because together we just have a much wider knowledge of
Yes,
what is appropriate for a certain level or interest base.
exactly. Like I
I don't
can't.
know
Yeah,
nearly as much about Japanese media as all the people in the community.
that's what I was gonna say. Like, I can't give you a perfect answer. Like, I don't know
Yeah,
what you're interested in. I don't know exactly where your level is. But at this point, there's like enough students that have gone through phase 1, 2 that are active in the community that can say, "Oh yes, at Unit 80, I was interested in this type, and I started reading this. Before Unit 80, it was too difficult, but after Unit 80, I kind of got it. But by Unit 120, I was able to do quite a lot in this. So it's like, you know." And then there's just like, or that's like, I finished phase 1, and this resource way too hard for me still, but this one, oh, I can watch this music video now and understand every word. It's like that's hard to write down because it's dynamic. So like the best answer that we have right now is honestly go ask people, and people are super willing to have this conversation. It happens like at least once a week, and at this point, there's some good answers because it happens so frequently that people will be like, oh yes, refer to this part of the conversation, and we got you. So it's kind of fun. 100%. Go take a look at that. Um, yeah, I suppose we can wrap it up now. It's been really fun though.
yeah, good times.
Good conversations. Um, yeah. On that note, I suppose we'll end it. Feel free to give me a follow on Twitter if you want to have a conversation as well. At Caleb Anderson. I'd say go follow Nico, but he doesn't open up his Twitter ever, so I'm not even gonna tell you what his handle is. Um,
Sorry.
come interact with us in the community. You might be able to get a hold of Nico there. Um, and yeah, take a look at NativShark if you haven't yet. I'm excited for the future. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.